Welcome to Anonymators review, and today's review is Bojack Horseman, a Netflix cartoon released in 2014.
I believe.
Yeah, and today's reviewers are myself, Wesley Boone, and
Emily Strasser.
Strasser.
I never know if you're going to say my name or not.
Well, I was hoping for you to say hi.
Hi!
Yay! Professional. Right, so we're going to talk about Bojack Horseman for a second. A rundown of the show. We're going to talk about the show, our general feelings of it, and I guess how we feel. What we generally liked without giving away too many spoilers. A general score of the system, and then we'll break down the episodes and talk about each one. And then that will obviously be full of spoilers. So we'll warn you before the spoilers kick in. But yeah, so let's hop straight into it. Bojack Horseman, what's your opinion?
Well, honestly, if it hadn't been for you, I probably would have never watched it, because to me it looked like an Adult Swim reject. And yeah, it looked like one of those Adult Swim shows that kind of fall by the wayside, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how deep this story really got. I mean, it wasn't any Citizen Kane by any means, but I actually really enjoyed it, so... Yeah.
It was surprising, for sure. The first episode, I didn't really get into it that much.
As I recall, it wasn't until, like, episode 3 that you were like, okay, maybe I'll continue this, and for me it was, like, episode 5 that I was like, oh, there's a story here.
Yeah, I definitely grew to like the show. It started making a lot of social commentary on not just Hollywood, but people. Mm-hmm. You know, not just actors and the situations that they found themselves in. But it's... I definitely like the ending of the show. It ended well, even though it doesn't close anything. But because a lot of shows I find, in both East and West cartoons, they'll end without closure. And not in a way that, like, because Bojack Horseman doesn't end really with closure, but it doesn't really leave you wanting... I mean, you could watch more, but the story is told with a satisfactory end. Whereas a lot of shows I've seen will be like, it just feels, let's put it this way, Bojack Horseman was written for 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Where some other TV shows, I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but there's been a lot where the show doesn't have an end. Like the season, I guess they're trying to do season finales and things nowadays. But for the most part, I've seldomly been satisfied with something. And I especially hate it when a TV series puts a cliffhanger at the end of the series. Case in point, Clone High, which is a fantastic cartoon. Really, really liked it, but it just ended like on this cliffhanger, and I don't know if they did it on purpose. I'd have to research that.
I can't imagine that they did, because I recall there was this one Fox program that my family and I used to watch long time ago. It was called John Doe, and it was like, the only thing I really remember is, I think it was like a detective show, and this guy just woke up one day in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and he had no idea who he was, and I think he became a detective. And the only thing I remember about the show was that at the very end, it was like, oh, the best friend, like, betrayed him. And then we never saw the rest of the series. And I was like, Dad, why did they do that? He was like, oh, probably because they were expecting to be greenlit for another season, but they didn't make the ratings, so they didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing Clone High was the same thing, where they had the intention of making another season. They just didn't get the ratings.
Yeah. I wouldn't know, because when I watched Clone High, I mean, it had already failed, and so. But I mean, I didn't know about it with its initial thing. I mean, we got it on a TV channel back home that was already out for a while. But yeah, that happens. Clone High, at least, though. It was like, okay, if we do get a second season, this is where we'll kick off. It was done well, because they flash freeze all the characters at the end of the, in a cryogenic chamber, right? And they can, I guess, spoiler, I guess, but I mean, really, that's a really old cartoon. And it's not really spoiling anything. They get frozen at the end of season 1 to move on to season 2. Why they get frozen, I'm not going to tell you. But yeah, I guess it leaves it open. So maybe they knew they weren't going to get a second season, so they decided they'll do it in case they get a second season. So they, it's a good way to, because you can be cryogenically frozen forever, but maybe you can be resurrected from it. Okay. But, so coming back to Bojack Horseman. Bojack Horseman, yes, did a good job of ending the show. And it felt like it was between points of Bojack's life, sort of like the story was telling the story of getting Bojack back on the right track somehow, whatever that right track could be.
Was that a horse pun?
It wasn't meant to be, but I'll take it. And yeah, so it wasn't bad. About episode 3, I started really getting into it to the point that I wanted to keep watching the show, and if people don't stop messaging me while I'm in the middle of this, I'm going to get mad, so I'll just put my phone on silent. Yeah, so I liked it. I would recommend it to be watched by people. It does take a little getting into. The one of the reasons why I wasn't really that initially drawn to it is the designs of the characters didn't reach me. Bojack looks weird. This humanoid horseman, it looks weird. It doesn't really look appealing I think the people who get first drawn to it are people who actively go out of their way to watch weird looking things, because it's like, oh, you don't want to watch the same old whatever. But I mean, I am allured by appealing looking designs and stuff. I'll admit this because
Adult Swim's made a career out of weird looking shows with weird looking designs.
But let's use Aquatine Hunger Force. I like their designs. They look interesting and they look like characters I'd like to follow the adventures of. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, is, I mean, fine, it's a Hanna-Barbera design, but it was appealing enough to, and I knew it was going to be an Adult Swim show. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing that really drove me to watch it, other than also people telling me, "Hey, go watch BoJack Horseman." So if anything comes from this, I would say go and watch it.
Yeah, watch the first few episodes. If you're still not into it by episode 5, probably not worth watching. But if you
it's a very serious show.
Yeah,
it's got comedy. It's got a ton of comedy. It makes a lot of cracks. I mean, there's this one joke that I thought was very well played. They introduce a character called Sarah Gecko or something. I can't really remember her first name, but
oh yes, I remember.
But there's a character called her last name is Gecko, and you don't get to meet her for a while. But there's humans and there are animals living like humans, I guess, live do. So BoJack Horseman's an actor. And he's got he's got his agent who is a cat, Princess something or other, Princess Carolyn, and but they are humans too. Like there's Andrew Garfield, and then
a lot of animal puns.
Tons of animal puns. But BoJack Horseman is an actor from a '90s TV sitcom called Horsing Around, and he has 3 kids who he adopted in the TV sitcom, and he's living off the high life of the sitcom. He's still living in a really nice house. He's, I guess, it's not an actor who's lost money. It's an actor who's invested his money wisely, and still sort of living. He's a has-been, and he's all, I guess, sad about it, as you would be, because, he hasn't been in that much acting, and he's become a really cocky actor. It's pretty much established from the get-go that he is a drunk, self-loathing, doesn't care for anybody else's opinions character. He just wants to drink and eat and forget about actually not forget about anything. He wants to remember just the 90s and when he made his TV sitcom.
Yeah, he's seen a lot watching old episodes over and over and over again. Like, that's pretty much all he spends his time doing is reliving
those times, you know. And so he's got one of his partners, or one of the people living in his house, Todd, is just this slacker that lives in his lives in his living room, really, for the most part, for like the longest time.
Interesting tidbit that I found out. Todd is played by Aaron Paul, whom, if anyone watched Breaking Bad, is the kid who played Jesse Pinkman. And also, tidbit of the tidbit, I met Aaron Paul because I lived in Albuquerque during the first, pretty much during all of the filming of Breaking Bad, I think. And yeah, I got to meet him before the show even premiered.
Okay.
And I got to be a stand-in for his little brother for that one episode. That was fun. He's a nice guy, actually. I was really surprised because, you know, he plays such a little punk on the show, and he walks up to me. He's like, "Hi, how you doing? Are you having fun? Oh, I hope you're having fun. It's a new show. Do you like it?" And I'm like, "Wow."
Well, that's acting.
Well, he's very good at it.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, so we've got all these mix of animals and humans, and you know, so these human-esque animals live, but they all still have their animal tendencies. So, like Princess Carolyn, his cat manager, she's got like that mouse toy that she takes with her wherever she goes, but she acts like an agent, where she's like running on the treadmill and getting like toned because she still has to look good. And but she and Bojack Horseman have on-off relationships, and it's like, so there's all these adult relationships that are happening, you know, to people who don't have their lives together because they've been either focusing on their careers. You know, they establish a lot of broken people, and I think the motif of putting animals, these humanoid animals, over the people, sort of take away the reality of these broken characters. They're not human, so we don't care. They're just goofy, smiley animals, you know? Yeah. I think, and this seems like it was done on purpose. You know, they were like, "Okay, we're going to surprise you with goofy antics. You don't know what's happening." Meanwhile, as I said, all the characters have some sort of problem, you know, which we'll get more into in the spoiler section.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the first time it's been done, that they put animals in place of humans to sort of tone down the harsh reality of it, just to make it more appealing. I mean, I once wrote an essay about how Mouse by Art Spiegelman, that graphic novel, you know, because they are cartoon characters and because they don't have that many human facial features other than the eyes and the mouth, it actually, like, it somehow lessens the... If you haven't read Mouse, I highly recommend it, though it is quite graphic and a little bit depressing. It's basically the graphic novel about
Auschwitz.
Auschwitz and World War II, and all the mice are Jews, and all of the cats are Germans, and the dogs are Americans. So you can tell it was written by an American.
Okay.
Cough.
Well, I mean, but again, in there, it's like you're removing... I guess you're removing that link, because again, as much as when we turn animals and we give them human characteristics, they're still animals to us, and there's that separation for us in our brains. And so when you have these horrible acts of war and whatever, these war crimes happening, and you put like a mouse and a cat and a dog in the situation, you know, it lures people in sort of this weird way, and then they read it and they're like, "Oh, that's actually kind of horrible."
Yeah.
You know, and again, there's two, I guess, different reactions. There's either why are you turning this horrific tragedy into a cutesy animal story, quote unquote, or, oh geez, why are these cute animals getting this horrible story happening to them? And yeah, and I think that the proper reaction is the second one, because you're supposed to realize that it's a horrible travesty. And sometimes we don't even want to know about bad stuff happening to humans. But if we tell the story through animals, then we might even then care more. I know I care more for the dog on TV than I care for the baby in the same movie, you know.
You are not alone.
Yeah, there happens. So, but yeah, the character designs weren't appealing to me straight away. They weren't bad. I just didn't care for them. It was literally
like humans, but with animals on their head.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I mean, they make a joke about that, like towards the end of the series, where one of the actors is playing. Like, there's an actor in the show playing Bojack Horseman, and he's got like a horse's head. on him instead of Bojack Horseman playing Bojack Horseman. It's or even a horse playing Bojack, because there are other horse actors. There are other animal actors out there. I guess it's also maybe a comment on the ridiculousness of Hollywood, maybe, because how many times have you heard? I mean, geez, the one that comes to recent memory is Johnny Depp playing Tonto in the Lone Ranger,
yeah.
the Let's Slow Up, which, I mean, that's a whole kettle of fish. Yeah, so, the show itself is a very, I don't want to say it's like crazy critical, because it's not. It's a fun little romp, I guess, but there is definitely an underlying message of, like, actors have shitty lives. Even though, yeah, sure, their shitty lives are accompanied by millions of dollars, but if you take money away, really, if you take the value of money away, and because that, again, money doesn't ever seem to be a very important thing in this, right? There's no Bojack is not getting by because he doesn't have money. He's got money. He's covered. He can buy a restaurant at a whim.
Yeah.
Which he does in the show. And I'm sure, as I say again, he's probably got investments. So the idea is that he is covered fiscally. He hasn't acted in years, so where's he getting his money from? I guess other than maybe royalties and whatnot. But yeah, he's having problems. He has problems dealing with himself, figuring out who he is, what he wants, what he wants to do with the rest of his life.
It's
his
heavy.
Relationships.
It's heavy, but it's not like overbearingly heavy.
Yeah, each episode sort of covers each character sort of in a different way. He's got his rival / friend, like just his
frenemy.
His frenemy, I suppose. It's this dog called Mr. Peanut Butter, which I find being quite a funny name, because I don't know if you know the whole story of putting
dog peanut butter and it makes it look like they're talking.
I suppose that could be the one thing. I maybe took it more a gross way, maybe, which wasn't intended. There's a thing where you, and I suppose it could be anything, but I know the story is peanut butter. You put it on your manhood, and then the dog licks it clean. So
you have such a dirty mind.
I don't know. It's just, I've heard it's usually, but I mean, I've heard cream cheese too, I suppose. So
I like mine better.
Yeah, it does make more sense. But it made me laugh when I first heard Mr. Peanut Butter. I'm like, are they going there? And I mean, there's a lot of like jokes throughout the show. There's this one gag which it made me laugh so hard when I saw it, because it was just so silly and out of place, because nobody mentions it or references it in the show. And there's so many of little things like this. There's this one gag where they've got a poster up. I think it's just when, I'm not going to tell you the situation, but they've got like this banner up, and it says, "Congratulations, Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter." And then below that it says, "Mr. Peanut Butter is one word," or peanut butter is one word, not Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah.
It says peanut butter is one word. So obviously the idea is that when they called in to write, it's like, "What do you want on the banner?" And then the person is like, "Congratulations, Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter. Peanut butter is one word." They put that immediately on the banner, because I've seen this happen in real life too. And then later on in the show, there's another one that says, "Congratulations, Mr. Peanut Butter." And then below it again, he goes, "Peanut butter is one word. Don't say peanut butter is one word," at the bottom of the banner.
Yeah.
And again, they put it up. It's like, these are supposed to be Hollywood people that, like, get the best of everything, and they still put it up. So there's these flaws, and that's not the only one. I can't think of anything other, because we saw this again a few weeks ago. Should have really reviewed it straight away, but been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, there's little things like that in the background. The pigeons, which are the paparazzi, they still sit on wires, but they're human sized. So when they fly,
I thought there was like a robin and because there were reoccurring characters in the beginning of the show that was like
the robin and the blue jay.
Yeah, the robin and the blue jay.
Well, I mean, but for the most part, like just the chaff in the background is or the chaff, sorry, in the background is like, they're pigeons, and so they fly and they're taking photos, and then they land on these wires, and the wires bend because they're full weight, they're humans. But so the animals still act, they have like the animal tendencies, but they're human sized, and they're treated equally as humans. Other than that, I mean, so there's a lot of there's nice things in the background. The intro, I liked the intro. It's this very heady vibe, like weird vibe. The idea behind the intro is that it's just Bojack cruising through his day.
Yeah.
You know, he's just it's just his head stays in one place, and the background changes to different situations of him getting out of bed, him walking, showering, drinking juice, hanging around, walking down, grabbing a smoothie, you know, walking through the mall, then going to a party, and then getting drunk at a party, and then like the end part of it is him just like waking up on his pool.
Yeah, he falls in a pool. Yeah, he
Yeah.
falls in a pool, and you can actually see there's a point of view shot from like the only shot that, besides, you know, him waking up in his bed, that doesn't have his head directly, because it's sort of like this.
Well, it's once you hit the point of view shot, he's looking out from the bottom of the pool.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of the characters are looking into the pool, obviously worried about him. And then he just like, and then the end of it is like him sitting on his like floaty in the pool, and
It's really surreal because, like, he's completely deadpan the entire time. Even as he's falling into the pool, he's just like, well, this is a thing that's happening.
But that sets the tone for his life, though, right? I mean, it's pretty much been established in the first episode that he hasn't done anything other than been a 90s sitcom character.
Yeah.
That's all he's done with his life, even though he wanted to do more. And that happens to people in real life. Like, you can, even in animation, you can fall into a pit where you're just going to work, animating, and then you go back home, and then you go back to work, you wake up and you animate, and you go back home and you eat stuff. You know, there's no, you know, you have to go out of you have to get yourself out of those doldrums and, you know, go hiking on the weekend or go visit another city, take a break, and, you know, you are responsible for that. And if you don't do that, if you don't actively seek, if you just keep sort of relying just on the bare minimum of what you need to do to get through life, then it gets boring.
I would argue it's more about hitting your peak too early, because he hits his peak in his 30s where he does this show, and then he just sort of exists for up until the end of the show. He just kind of is there. He's
yeah, sure. I mean, I mean, your peak can be different things. It could be just getting your animation job, as my example, or it could be you being the acting. The point is, he's coasting through life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a nice way to sort of, I think, remind you. I liked watching it every time I watched the intro. I think I only skipped it once or twice.
Oh, we would watch it at least once, and then
well, there's only like 13 episodes. I know for a fact, like the first few times we did watch through.
Okay, I think we skipped it maybe 4 times then.
Maybe, yeah. So yeah, that was pretty. I like that. It reminded me of Hotline Miami in a way, just sort of like a little, you know, like, because Hotline Miami, a video game, where it's also very surreal. Lots of weird. I don't know. I want to say like a drug euphoria, but I don't know. And then what else is there? For the most part, the show itself, as I said from the beginning, the show, I think, tells a very. It's not straightforward. What it's trying to get at you. I mean, it does wrap it up quite nicely at the end, where it's like, oh, okay, but there's so many twists and turns in the show itself. You know, again, we'll get into a lot of them in spoiler mode. But they like, oh, did I mention the gecko thing? Did I finish mentioning what I was saying? Because I was talking about the animals. Right, so the gecko lady, which, if I can just find her full name, which I guess is just not going to happen.
Well, she was only there.
Vanessa Gecko.
Oh.
Right, so you got, like, Princess Carolyn, who's a cat, and she's talking about Vanessa Gecko, who she's like, I hate Vanessa Gecko. Now, this is I guess a very teensy spoiler, but it just goes to show you how clever I felt the thing is. So you think in your head, because there's other characters, there's Quentin Tarantullino, who is a tarantula man. Okay, so, and then like, so you think...
he's got like 6 arms.
Yeah,
too.
So in the back of your head, you're thinking, oh, Vanessa Gecko is going to be a gecko. Like, why wouldn't she? Or some sort of lizard. And then Vanessa Gecko shows up, and it's a human. It's just a straight up human. Like, slender, well-maintained human woman who...
She's very proud of the fact that she has children.
Yeah, very, very happy with her life being all set up in the proper way. get, and then her and Carolyn have, and I did like that there was no, because the story was not about other nonsense, and it was just about sort of the lives of these characters. There was no, the only implied racism I thought there was, because there was no like speciesism or racism in the show. The only implied racism I thought was with the bears. I don't know if you noticed, but every time a bear spoke in the show, it was always, it was always like this goofy sound, and they were always like in cleaning positions or menial labor positions. So I was like, are the bears supposed to represent like a minority of some sort? Because I'm not sure, but they were there. They were, like, one was a house nurse and whatever. That was the only one I could sort of, and maybe I'm even grasping at straws there. It hardly matters, because that's not what the show is about. It's not talking about that. That's not its whistle.
I'm sure there was a board meeting somewhere, and someone was like, what would be funny is if at least one of the characters didn't speak. They just made animal sounds. Yeah,
bears were just dumb.
They were just rah, rah, rah.
Yeah, they were pretty much like considered like that workforce, I guess. So otherwise, it's clever. It's got some nice jabs. There's probably a lot of stuff we probably even missed the first time around. You could probably break it down a lot more. But the movie, the TV series itself, you can crank it out like really quick. I mean, the episodes aren't really that long.
It's your usual standard 20 minutes, 22 minutes.
Now, that being said, with the season 1 actually coming to a proper close, I don't need a season 2. I could be like, oh, okay, it's done well. I've just read here that Netflix renewed the series for a second season, set to start production in 2015.
Oh, no kidding.
So, just because I said I didn't want to see a season 2 does not mean I won't watch a season 2. It wrapped it up nicely that if it ended there, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Bojack, the story was told between 2 points of a character's life. Mm-hmm. So, second season, ideally I would like to see it happen after what the series finale sets up. To me, it would be like now after that big thing that happens.
Yeah.
Preferably, but if not, then I mean I'd happily watch a second season come what may. That's just what I'd like to see. I'd like to see them stick to sort of that what they've set up so far, what they're good at telling, and that's the in between story of this character. But either way,
we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic because season 1 did it really well, so we'll see. Maybe they'll follow kind of the same formula where now it's point A to point B. Now we're at point B to point C. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. So my general review for it is go watch it.
Yes.
Give it 3 to 5 episodes maybe. I mean, it's only 13 episodes long. But if you want a serious story, it's not a coming of age. I don't know what you would call it, because it's
like a middle-age crisis.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's the coming of middle age. A character sort of reevaluating his life, reevaluating his position in the world.
Almost a second puberty.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it's like a coming of age, because now it's like he's realized who he is actually, and he doesn't like who he is, so he wants to change that.
Yeah.
And I like that, because I think people in general need to also think that about themselves. Sometimes you aren't who you think you are. Sometimes you are a dick. It's you might not be a dick to some people. Obviously, the friends you keep around you don't think you're a dick, but there's somebody out there who thinks you're a dick because you might have said something or acted in a certain way, and in your head you were right. And there's a lot of that in this, where Bojack is like, no, but I didn't do anything wrong. There's a sequence where he... And then, I mean, it does blow up in comical ways. There's like that sequence where the Navy SEAL, which is an actual SEAL.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole sequence with that where he... to Bojack, it was him... He had the principle of the matter, and maybe some people would have acted the same way. I mean, I know I get like in the face of authority, I can also get quite like, fuck you. You don't have any, don't push your authority here. But from the outside, what people are seeing without context sees just this guy being a dick to a war veteran, you know, and so that's obviously not accepted in America because it's like, oh, he hates the army and the soldiers, and this guy barely was even he wasn't even in the war. He was just stationed at whatever.
He wasn't really a war hero. It was like, you were enlisted in the army, you went through the training, you probably scrubbed a deck. Yeah. That was it. Yeah,
there's no... you know, and then so the army guy obviously takes the credit for it.
It also... I was also thinking recently about how internet celebrities especially... but just celebrities in general are under such big scrutiny, like, you know, because the thing with the Navy SEAL is it turns into, like, this whole thing on the news, and the tabloids are all over it, and it's just like, this would never freaking happen if he wasn't a celebrity. But I've seen people just, like, scrutinize other internets, like, especially on the internet, where people will just say a quote-unquote ableist term, which, you know, sometimes it depends on who you talk to, and suddenly there's somebody on the internet, like, somebody calls another person stupid, and then somebody on the internet is like, don't buy this person's stuff, don't watch his channel, don't look at his art, because he's the worst possible person ever, and it's... That kind of is what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think, it was blown out of proportion because that's what happens. Things like that get blown out of proportion. Sensationalism. It's sensationalism. It's what happens. But, there's a lot of that in this. There's these sort of little social commentaries, and from the whole point, Bojack kind of plays his own straight man, I think, where he's like, no, but what? I didn't do anything wrong, even though... if he just sort of stepped... And maybe, sure, he didn't do anything wrong sometimes. I mean, he was just really being a casual dick, which, if any of us, as you said, had done it, like, nobody would have given a shit. But, because, again, he's got that little bit of notoriety, and...
That's kind of what bothers me about, you know, the celebrity status in general, is the fact that, like, you know... some nobody you see walking on the beach with a bikini and cellulite and no one cares, but, you know, insert celebrity name here, walking on the beach with cellulite and a bikini, and everyone's like, oh, just let herself go, and I'm like, why do I care? I don't care.
Yeah, so that's definitely... Look, there's a lot of social commentary on this. It's the lifestyles, not only of the rich and famous, but... take away the money and the fame, and you've got this broken down person who, in the end, I guess, just needed to, he kind of got himself knocked straight, you know, while screwing with his friends, and he had some very loyal friends, like Princess Carolyn is very loyal to him throughout the show.
It's amazing. She has the patience of a saint, but I think she also realizes she's the only one who can...
help him.
Yeah. And maybe it's not...
Because if she was out completely for herself, which she isn't complete, you know, like, she definitely wants to make good decisions for herself, but, you know, there are scenes where she sacrifices, like, her entire day for him, and that, like, ruins a couple of things for her, and it just screws everything up.
I think she also... She came off as a character who really liked the thrill of the chase. She liked feeling as if she...
Well, she is a cat.
You just gave me a look. So, yeah. So I think a part of it, for her, a part of it was she enjoyed the thrill of the chase, and the other part of it was she knew that... Because there is a point in the show where Bojack does change agents, and... yeah, that didn't end so well. So she's the only one who can really stand poor Bojack, because she's the only one who's in deep enough that she knows what buttons to press for him.
Yeah. And I suppose a very important point, I guess we should have established at the beginning, because it's quite a big thing for the movie. Oh, for the series. He is busy writing his biography, or getting it written, and he can't handle it. We find out from the first episode because he just keeps goofing around.
Yeah.
The publisher hires a ghostwriter for him, and so that's what gets done. And so he starts this friendship with this character. His name is Diane, and they start living. They start becoming friends, and it looks like they're actually hitting it off quite nicely. And there's a lot of there's like, oh, is this going to be a happily ever after type thing? And it isn't. You know, maybe a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but not really, because you can kind of see it coming. You're like, okay, I mean, there's a lot of it's a lot of the time I also felt that they used tropes like, for example, the girl liking the wrong boy. They used that trope as if, oh no, she's supposed to like the main character, but the thing is, it turns out there's a reason. That actually happens. It's like his life is his actual life. It's not a TV show where tropes exist, and they do that pretty well. So yeah, I would say go watch it, ladies and Germans.
It's on Netflix.
See, I tricked them. I was going to say ladies and not germs, but Germans. I am original. Number one, do not steal.
Golf class.
Okay, so I don't know. Look, I give this show a pretty high rating. I give it a must go watch right now. Watch it as soon as you can, I think, especially if you like commentary. Animation's pretty okay. You're not going to be blown away by anything, but it's nice. It's smooth enough.
Yeah,
voice acting's nice. The music's really nice.
It's better animation than Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Well, that didn't really set a high bar.
No,
but yeah, it's puppet animation, cutout animation, whatever you want to call it, but it's smooth.
Yeah. It's not. I don't know. It does what it needs to do.
Didn't we see a glitch though? There was a glitch. I remember, because now my eyes are completely trained for seeing frame by frame. There was a glitch. I think it was either a mouth or an eye glitch. We saw in Bojack. Remember, I pointed it out. I'm like, oh, there's a glitch, and then we had to go back, and then it's like a really Bojack's blah 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 blah, and then his mouth just does a weird thing.
Are you sure that wasn't Family Guy?
No, it was. Okay. Bojack Horseman.
Okay, all right. Because I remember we did that on Family Guy too, where we were trying to figure out if Family Guy was puppet, and then there was a scene where Quagmire, his mouth was the wrong mouth. Yeah. For a split second, we were like, wait a minute, and then we had to go back and watch it again.
I think with Family Guy, I think it's again, I think it's part traditional, then part cut out. Like the mouths, for example, would be cut out.
Yeah. Well, it is mostly talking heads if you really break down the animation.
I mean, there's a couple of action sequences, but that's for our Family Guy review, which will probably never happen.
No, we'll never review Family
So
Guy.
yeah, I give it a 5 out of 5, honestly. Because story is a very important thing for me. So I would watch this again. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. I give it full marks. Tells a good story. Has interesting characters. Has an interesting plot line. Episode 12, the drug episode, was a bit weird. I think that just felt like animators goofing around, really, and the writers were like, yeah, let's just whatever.
I think it was like, okay, so we need to get to this point in the scene. We need to get to this point, but we've already got the last episode planned out, so we need to stretch this one. Mm-hmm. So that's what.
But I liked it. I like episodes like that sometimes. Just yeah.
It felt very anime-esque in the sense that the last few episodes are this really intense, what's happening with the show? And
that's a classic symptom of anime, where the first, let's say it's a 13-part series, the first 10, 11 episodes are just whatever, and then the last 2 episodes are we're going to cram all the plot in these last 2 episodes because oops. It keeps happening, but it does.
But that doesn't really happen with this one. There's actually, a continuous story. Yeah, the first few episodes are kind of goofing around, but then...
I felt the tempo, actually slowly increases because of, I mean, the only reason why there's so much panic going on in those last few episodes is because Bojack's not happy with his book, and he wants to rewrite it. Yeah. So he tries to stay up late, and then they introduce the doctor, is this is the guy that killed Michael Jackson. So...
Oh, yeah.
So that's my score, 5 out of 5. Go watch.
I would give it a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 because maybe there were a couple of things I wish had been wrapped up a little bit nicer. I mean, and they're purely nitpicks. I'm always really cautious to give something full marks. But yeah, highly enjoyed it. I'm surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I never thought I would like this, but I'm pleasantly surprised, and I think you will be too.
Yeah, so give that a watch. Okay, so from here on out, we're going to talk about each episode, or at least break down the episodes. Talk about what maybe we liked and whatnot, but it will be spoilerific, so be prepared, and giving you 2 seconds. Okay. So, episode 1 pretty much establishes Bojack is busy preparing his memoirs and writing his autobiography, and this is where we're introduced to a lot of characters. He is still in a relationship with Princess Carolyn, but this is where we establish that Bojack is still living in his 90s persona, or at least living off his 90s fame. The world has changed, because I mean, if 90s sitcoms were a different beast altogether, right? They were so happy and free. I mean, if you compare Full House to Game of Thrones, right? I mean, one of them has sex, blood, and heads rolling, and the other one is about medieval. No, no, I'm kidding. No, but obviously there's a massive difference between the two, and that's the standards. I mean, in the 90s, that's what people wanted to watch, and now in the 2000s, 2010s...
it was like late 80s, early 90s, I think, is when a lot of people, especially like me growing up, I remember frequently watching Home Improvement was a big one for me.
Just that sort of that sentimentality of, family situations, and they're all sort of goofy, but it's still a little good lesson about life and love, and it all comes into a nice end.
It's all very family friendly. Yeah. So if you were too young to remember 90s sitcoms, I feel for you. Yeah. Because they were good.
That's pretty much so the thing, and they make like jokes about that later too, where I think it's like the early 90s, and he's getting into a show, and he's like, hey, did you see that thing we saw on TV yesterday? Or like he's busy driving down LA or whatever, and he's like, we get it, the 80s were a thing, ha ha ha. It's like he's saying, I'm like, okay, sure, So he obviously in his past mocked himself for doing something in the future that obviously he wouldn't have known. Yeah. So he's still in a relationship with his Princess Carolyn. But you don't know she's his agent until he sort of gets her out of his house, and then she's like calls him back. He's like, "What? I just broke up with you," and she's like, "Yeah, but I'm still your agent, so let's get you a job," type thing. And it's pretty much, and this is where he meets Diane, who I guess he starts hitting it off with actually pretty quickly, but he doesn't know that Diane is the girlfriend of his arch nemesis, frenemy, Mr. Peanut Butter. And you also meet Mr. Peanut Butter. Mr. Peanut Butter is a bit of an idiot. In an annoying way, that someone as intelligent as Bojack, and Bojack is genuinely intelligent, but very cynical, and as I said, full of self-loathing, and kind of thinks more about himself than actually is there. And that's a common problem with geniuses. I wouldn't say Bojack's a genius, but that happens with smart people. They think they're better than everybody else. That happens. So whereas Mr. Peanut Butter, he's a lovable idiot. Yeah. There's an episode again later where
it should also be mentioned that the reason why Mr. Peanut Butter is a frenemy of, mostly an arch nemesis of Bojack, is because he also had a 90s sitcom. Like, it was pretty much the same idea, where it's like, oh, here's a family and they need a dad, so we're gonna put an animal character in it.
Yeah, it was his show, which I can't remember the name of his show.
Mr. Peanut Butter's Playhouse, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same as Horseman Around. It was exactly the same concept, except people talk about there were 2 characters in there, they were twins, whereas Bojack's was with 3 kids that he adopted.
Yeah, they were different ages. And I think also Mr. Peanut Butter's show was... I think his show was more Disney Channel sitcom than it was...
Oh, you think so?
That was the impression that I got.
Okay.
I mean, wasn't it called Mr. Peanut Butter's Playhouse.
I can't remember what it was called, but it was definitely...
I just remember Bojack saying something about, like, oh, yours was more...
Mr. Peanut Butter's house.
Mr. Peanut Butter's house.
No, I think it was actually meant to imply that it was still, at least the way I saw it was that it was so horsing around, say, like it happens in Hollywood and I guess TV and movies in general. When one type of movie comes out, people will make replicas of it because, I mean, there's money to be mined there, until it gets oversaturated and then nobody wants anything to do with it anymore. I think Mr. Peanut Butter's house was definitely the same concept. Animal caretaker with human kids. And that's... But then Mr. Peanut Butter will fight to the death. It's like, no, but we had twins, whereas you had 3 different aged and sexed kids.
And there was also a joke about, like, are you
Zoe and Zelda.
Zoe and Zelda.
Which were the name of the twins, and even though they were twins, they had different personalities. And so one guy, like, on a BuzzFeed article talked about... and that's actually a pretty good point. Because that BuzzFeed guy... Right? Remember what... Because Diane... I can't remember his name. But there was a guy who worked for BuzzFeed who was an ex-boyfriend of Diane's. And he was... the reason why Diane said she didn't like being with him was because he was so mean and that he thinks he was better than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
She says that right in the beginning. And we found out later that the reason why... so I just read the thing about Andrew Garfield, who is like this crazy pom, who, oh, look over here, blimey, just because he's British. Like the
Andrew Garfield is British. I don't think he's that British.
Yeah. But oh man, what was I saying?
It was Zoe, Zelda. And then the dude BuzzFeed.
Oh yeah, the BuzzFeed guy. Oh yeah, so later on in the episode you find out that that Diane is not interested in Bojack, even though he does come out to her as like, I like you type thing.
Yeah.
But yes, she obviously doesn't have anything to do with him. But what was I looking for? Oh yeah, what I was laughing at was the fact, I remember Bojack in one episode is talking about Andrew Garfield, and he's like, and oh yeah, somebody finds out information, but Andrew Garfield hates Mondays and loves lasagna. Obviously referencing the cat of a similar name. Andrew the cat, as we all know. Garfield the cat, in case you people can't take fucking sarcasm. So, yeah, pretty much episode 1 sets up all the characters. I wouldn't say it's a very exposition-heavy episode. But it does do what it has to do exposition-wise to set up the characters without having to really establish a lot of the history. But we find out more... I care more for the characters as the show goes on because you find out more about them. And maybe that was the big thing why I didn't like episode 1 so much, was because I didn't know the characters. It was just like, oh, this looks like another one of these shows.
Yeah.
But no, it is not. It gets much different. Anyway, the show ends with Bojack... and Diane sitting on, I think, the roof of his house, and she's going to write his memoirs. Episode 2 hops in. It's called Bojack Hates the Troops.
Which
is
I
the
have
Navy SEAL.
I have to mention this. Okay, I have to, because I specifically remember Keith Olbermann used to be a thing on MSNBC, but he got in trouble because he gave money to some...
Hooker?
No, it was some kind of politician, and apparently you're not supposed to do that when you're a news anchor or something.
I wouldn't know.
Anyway, so Keith Olbermann, who has been sort of quiet, I don't know what the heck he's doing these days, but apparently he comes on this show as a whale with a giant head, because the joke used to be that Keith Olbermann had a giant head. So that was interesting hearing Keith Olbermann's voice come out of
the name of the whale is Tom Jumbo Grumbo, voiced by Keith Olbermann. So yeah, you're definitely right.
So
and the name of the news network is MSNBC, but the C is spelt like the ocean sea. Who reports on his business deeds and other happenings in Hollywood. There's an episode where the D in Hollywood goes missing, and so then the whole of Hollywood changes it to Hollywood. Like everything becomes Hollywood just from that episode onward. And that was something I did like about the show. Like there was a lot of proper continuity throughout the show.
I've noticed you like continuity.
I do. It's that was the thing that bummed me out so much as a kid while I watched Flintstones, was things like, I'm Fred Flintstone and I'm the world's #1 bowler, and then he would do amazing bowls, and then like the next episode he couldn't bowl for shit, and I'm like, I hated that. I hated that so much. I remember as a kid. So even
Such
to this,
a critical child. No wonder you're doing reviews as an adult.
It's when you like, it was like in Gravity Falls too, when the
S
mystery hack, and the S falls over on the shack, and that stayed throughout, and I was like, I like that so much.
Isn't it even that they rebuild the S and it still falls
Yeah,
back
it still
over?
falls over at the end of the episode. I just like that so much. I like little things like that. It's just such nice attention to detail that, I don't know, it just makes me happy. It's such a weird thing to be happy for. But anyway, yeah, so Bojack hates the troops. As we were explaining, Bojack finds some muffins on a pile of avocados or something, or melons, and he takes them, and then a Navy SEAL walks in, and he's like, "Those are my muffins." He's like, "Okay, but they were just sitting there, so I'm going to take them."
Mm-hmm.
And then the Navy SEAL's like really rude, and then Bojack's like, "Well, fuck you! I'm going to eat these muffins now. I'm going to take them. I'm going to buy them, and I'm going to eat them all. I'm going to eat them now." You know, and so that he doesn't even want the muffins. He wanted to go buy something else, like something healthy.
Yeah.
And like he ends up eating these muffins just to sort of make a point, and then it all ends up on the news, and then Bojack makes it worse and worse and worse, and it's all again. It's just, it's, you know, news media blowing up on bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's probably what the episode was mostly talking about.
He's a celebrity, therefore we have to view everything he does under a microscope.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, nothing too intelligent from that episode. It's pretty much how we treat celebrities. Episode 3, Prickly Muffin.
That was when the girl who is...
Yeah, the girl Sarah Lynn, his co-star, who was the youngest character in his show. So in the 90s she was like 5 or whatever. Yeah. 15 or between, I guess. Yeah, so say like early 90s 5, and because by this time she's 30.
Yeah.
And she's had a pop music career, like, so she after the success of Horse and Around, she's in her 20s, and so this is obviously set in the 2010s, like now.
Yeah.
Bojack's in his 50s, right?
Yeah.
He's 50s, and so Sarah Lynn's in her 30s, and she's already completely used up because she gets bad advice from Bojack. I don't think she had a dad. Is it established that she didn't really have a dad? Because
I don't recall.
Yeah, I know her mom was very like, oh, you got to do these things, you know, like how Hollywood moms are kind of seen, how they sort of live vicariously through their children. There
was also a point too that like when she's in her 20s and she's at the height of her pop music career, she she said, it doesn't matter, I'm going to be 20 forever. And then, like, the instant she turns 30, suddenly just Hollywood just doesn't care. It's like, ew, you're 30, you're gross and old, we don't want you anymore.
And this is definitely a talk on, what's that girl's name, the redhead girl that's caused in so much trouble lately?
Which one?
So that ex-Hollywood, I don't know if she's a Hollywood starlet anymore.
I know who you're talking about, I can't think of her name. Just pick one of the...
Well,
just pick some Disney child star who is now an adult and completely ruining their life.
Yeah, I can't remember the name right now, but anyway.
She was in
Freaky Friday?
Freaky Friday and some other one.
Let's see what we got here. Well...
It was the one with the twins,
wasn't Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah. So, yeah, Lindsay Lohan... It's basically sort of, I guess, an analogy of Lindsay Lohan. She's hopped up on drugs all the time. And anyway, she comes to Bojack for... like there's all these flashbacks where there's things like where Bojack's like, he tells her as a little kid, like, you've got to give every single little drop that you can of your soul to these people. They demand more and more. And to an adult you tell that to, sure, they'll be like, yeah, no, I've got to give my soul. Because you understand the limits of that. But as a kid, you take that seriously because your hero/TV dad is telling you to, live through that.
This was also the episode, too, that, like... Bojack has this weird mentality that he's still kind of her dad, but he doesn't know how to be a dad, so he's just like...
He's acting the TV dad again.
Yeah, it's
so
like...
she's doing goofy things like setting the house on fire, and he's like, oh, you. Meanwhile, she's committing drug crimes.
Yeah, she's like, can I punch a hole through your wall? And he's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll just fix it in TV land, type thing. That's definitely... He sort of goes... I think he goes a bit crazy. Yeah. Eventually he comes to, and he chases her out. Not before, I guess, or maybe after. They have an illicit love affair.
That was weird.
Yeah, like she's 30, he's 50. They realize that they're sexually consenting adults, so why the heck not? But you know, from a tabloid point of view, it's $1 million. You know, yeah, it's basically from the public point of view, it'll be like a father and daughter having sex. Yeah. So it would have caught anyway. So some of the paparazzi, the Robin and the Bluebird, take photos of it. And yeah, that's pretty much the sum of that. It's just Bojack going through sort of his wanting to relive the 90s through her again. So maybe it even talks about like there's always her parents are always living through her to get to their youth, and he wants to be back in those good old 90s days where he was top of everything.
Yep.
Then episode 5, Live Fast, Diane.
Oh, do we skip 4? The Zoes.
Oh, the Zoes and Zeldas. Yes, episode 4. This is where you meet Diane's ex-boyfriend, the writer of, and he's writing an article about Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the article was, but I don't remember it coming out. And then he wrote an article on BuzzFeed about the Zoes and Zeldas. And there's always these references. And then I think Zoe's the kind-hearted one and the Zelda's the mean-spirited one. And then this is also really cool. Throughout the show, there's always characters in the background wearing a shirt that says "I'm a Zoe" or "I'm a Zelda."
Yeah.
That was a nice touch. Obviously, it being a trend.
Yeah. There was also mention about Todd, the roommate, Bojack's roommate / dude living on his couch, plans to make a rock opera.
Oh, yeah.
Which starts a whole weird thing.
Yeah. Oh, it was just, for some reason, firstly, Todd all of a sudden wants to make a rock opera. Never really established before. I mean, he's always been the slacker, right? And all of a sudden he wants to do something with his life. And that's fine. And then there's mention of Bojack's friend from the past has a flashback where his friend is like, I think it starts off with, it's like, don't worry, Bojack, it's the responsibility of the people at the top to help the people at the bottom get up higher. And then Bojack misquotes that by saying, oh, it's the responsibility of the people at the bottom to lift us up even higher.
Yeah.
Not wanting to help Todd. Anyway, his friends guilt him into helping Todd, and they go through a whole rigmarole of writing the rock opera, and I don't know, like it never. There's this thing that later on Todd in the later episode realizes that Bojack screwed him by getting him to buy the video game, but I can't remember. I need to watch it again. I don't remember Bojack actively wanting to get him to buy the video game. I thought he wanted to stop Todd from buying the video game so he could help him finish his rock opera. But there must have been something. I must have blinked and missed something. But yeah, it's pretty much Todd gets into a video game that he was super addictive to, but this was the latest version of it, and it was a very silly game. It was like a Connect 3 game. but it had like this Call of Duty like box art in the front. And yeah, so he completely spaces out on his rock opera and never comes to anything.
Yeah.
It was an okay episode. Didn't really care for it. It didn't.
Yeah, I honestly anything with Sarah Lynn in it, and anything with, I don't know. Yeah, that was still kind of like, I'm not quite into this yet, but yeah. Episode 5, I believe, was when I really started like, wow, I actually start to like this now. Took me longer than you, I think. So I guess there's not much to say about 4, so let's move on to 5. Yeah, 4 was, I mean, it did what it did. Live Fast, Diane, I can't pronounce her last name, Nguyen, who, I believe she's Asian? I think she was Filipino,
yeah, and so she goes to visit her family in Boston, who are complete Boston white trash, even though they're still Filipinos. And like what, she's like the second generation or something.
Yeah.
But the family acts completely like how you imagine white trash Boston to act. You know, you'd have to do the Boston accent. I can't do it. Boston. I'll go so yeah, Bojack goes with her, and basically, her father dies. She doesn't actually want anything to do with it. You know, even though she still wants family approval, and this happens to people a lot. I've seen this happen with a lot of friends where they're living their own life and they just got away from their parents who've just made their lives crazy, but they still crave that acceptance that, oh, you've done well. And that's definitely Diane. You know, she does do a very good job of hiding it, but obviously towards the end she cracks and she's like, all she just wanted was a mother to be happy for her.
Yeah. Not
hate and constantly criticize everything.
Yeah, because, and she's also got, like, 3 brothers, I think, and one of them is the black sheep of the family, which is literally a black sheep. Yeah,
it was, the joke that was set up was, I swear the whole episode was just for this joke. She talks about her 3 brothers and her adoptive brother, and then Bojack's like, oh, so are you the black sheep of the family? And she's like, no, it's the other guy. And it's like, oh, and then you go in and he comes down and he's a black sheep, you know, and it's like, okay, well done. But they just play it very straight. They're like, oh, here comes the black sheep, you know, it's like the only animal in this human family.
Yeah.
So that was quite silly. And then the other half of the story, this wasn't that yet. So the other half of the story is Todd and Princess Carolyn are making a scam, turning Bojack's home into David Boreanaz. I'm actually not even sure who that is, but some other Hollywood actor who they just post fake pictures of him up on the wall.
And it's not even good. It's just pictures of his head over pictures of Bojack.
Yeah, it is so... But anyway, they make a killing, and then they get busted, and then... Princess Caroline escapes without getting caught, and Todd gets into prison.
Yeah.
He calls Bojack and says, Bojack, you just got to come help me. The bail is like $50 and you can get me out. And he stays in prison for like 2-3 episodes. So Bojack gets... doesn't he try and kiss Diane in this episode? Because he kisses her and she's like, no, whoa. And then she's like, no, I'll just get out of the car. He's like, well, it's still a few miles. She's like, no, I'll walk from here.
No, I think that was the episode where they go to Bojack's friend's house or something.
Because he gets crazy drunk in this episode.
Oh.
And then because the next episode is the D thing where he steals the D sign from the Hollywood.
Oh, right. Okay, you're right. So episode 6, upon returning from Boston. Bojack, in a drunken stupor, steals the D from the Hollywood sign.
Yeah, and it's like sitting in his pool, and it's very noticeable, but for some reason no one can find it.
Yeah, and people are like really upset, so doesn't he... Yeah, he talks to Mr. Peanut Butter, he's like, come on, you gotta...
Yeah, because the episode before... No, he didn't kiss Diane in the previous episode. What happened was he ended up at dinner with Diane, Peanut Butter, and... because they flew back from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Peanut Butter was there to pick them up at the airport. And then he gave her a gift, which was like a necklace, I think, that had a D on it.
Yeah.
You know, and then him and Mr. Peanut Butter is like starting to like sort of notice the friendship between him and Diane. And he starts, I guess, getting maybe a little bit jealous, thinking that Bojack's trying to steal her from him. And so he's like buying her gifts, and that's when Bojack buys the restaurant, because he's like, they're trying to show off like who's more wealthy and clever and all that stuff. It becomes like this crazy sort of competition between the two of them. So obviously he ends up in... they leave together. Peanut Butter and Diane, they leave. And then Bojack gets like super, super drunk from his restaurant that he now purchased and ends up stealing the Hollywood D sign. Which becomes a whole big thing also in the episode. And then Mr. Peanut Butter actually steals... his idea for stealing the D sign and takes it back to his place and says, I just love Diane. I think this is where he proposes to Diane, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. He proposes... No, he doesn't propose yet. because he does it for his reality TV show, but he hides it. He's like, no, it's just you and me. Don't worry about it. Will you marry me? She's like, oh, yes. And then like reality TV. He's like, did you get it? And I was like, oh. And meanwhile, he promised her that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And again, this is like what it sets up, right? It's like sets up as like, oh, he lied to her just to get like the TV thing, or and there's all these other establishments where it's like, oh, he's had 2 wives before and he's not happy with his marriage. He's not even sure if he loves Diane, or if he just loves the idea of being with Diane. Where he talks to Todd about that. You know, like Mr. Peanut Butter is like very conflicted in that situation. But he wants to do it anyway because he is in love with Diane, I guess, at the moment. And so they're giving the viewer all these little tidbits. I think that's going to be like, hey, Diane and Bojack, they're going in a smoochy face together.
Diane and Bojack or Diane and Peanut Butter?
No, Diane and Bojack, because they're setting up like that Peanut Butter and Diane will break up.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant... Never mind. Okay.
And then the other half of that story is Todd in prison, where he joins 2 gangs, the Aryans and the Latin Kings, and then almost ends up getting killed because but it plays out like a TV
like
trope.
A high school, like a after school special where it's like
where a boy goes on dates with 2 girls.
Yeah, where it's just like, oh no, I don't know which gang to join. Maybe I can somehow still join them both. But of course the Aryans are Nazis and the Latin Kings are Latinos, obviously. So of course they can't intermingle because racists.
Yeah. And yeah, so they're about to curb stomp him, and then...
Doesn't he break out of prison too?
Well, yeah, something breaks a hole in the wall of the prison and they all escape.
Yeah, there was like a prison riot and somehow Todd...
I don't think it was a riot. I think it was... I think it was one of the characters on... Somebody caused like Bojack maybe. I can't remember. I think it was just something broke the wall down. Next episode, Say Anything. Bojack sabotages himself with an epic bender. Oh yeah, he just drinks crazy. I don't actually remember this episode too well.
Yeah,
Oh yes, no wait, this is the one where Princess Caroline sacrifices like all of the things that she'd set up like a lot of her life. You know, like the new movie that's coming up, the actress that she hires, and then Vanessa Gecko. This is where Vanessa Gecko gets... You first see Vanessa Gecko, even though Vanessa Gecko was being like... Or, yeah, it was... She... In one of the previous episodes, the episode with the Sarah Lynn girl, how like the Princess Carolyn, she would keep coming in and like giving these tips and everything, like, oh yes, I hear your boyfriend or ex-boyfriend Andrew Garfield was with Vanessa Gecko. You know, maybe you want to sign up with me instead. And she acts off like all very like, oh please, you know, very needy, and then Sarah Lynn goes and signs up with Gecko instead, and that leaves Andrew Garfield open for her to poach him. So it was like this whole plan.
Yeah.
So this episode sort of has a lot of that coming in, where she's setting up a lot of things, and then Vanessa Gecko gets merged into her company, taking over her office and her assistant, and just ruining all of her plans. And you know, this gets Princess Carolyn like really sort of miffed, because Bojack's like bugging her, right? He's leaving like he's like, oh, why don't we just get together?
Oh,
you know, like, why don't you love me? And I mean, I know I love you, and you know you love me. Why don't we just get back together? And so she decides, okay, no, that's what she's going to do. She's going to end up with Bojack. And then they're at his restaurant, and eventually he's like, no, actually, this is not a good idea. Because he finds out his dying friend who used to write the sitcom called... Yeah. And at the end of the episode, you realise it's her 40th birthday. I think this is just to sort of characterise Carolyn a bit more, sort of the stresses that she goes through day to day.
Yeah. Didn't
really... you know, like, each episode was like, I mean, I really felt bad for Carolyn. At the end of the episode, you realise it was her 40th birthday. It was just a sad little moment. She's like, you know, I think it was... The phone says, happy 40th birthday. And it's like, thanks, phone. That's all she has, you know, whereas like Gecko has her family and everybody else is off with other people. I guess just a victim of living a very difficult, fast-paced life, you know, no time to start a family. Next episode, The Telescope. This is where Bojack learns his old buddy Herb Kazaz, who's his old friend from years back, that basically set up him. He got his he was a comedian. He got picked up by a studio, and then Bojack gets put into his sitcom because it's like he knows Bojack is funny and he wants Bojack to succeed.
Yeah, because Bojack was originally like this really small time, only told jokes in front of, like, at bars and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And this is like one of the things that I felt really bad for Bojack. Actually, it was the first time I felt bad because I've been in this sort of a similar situation where basically what happens is Bojack, he goes to his friend, he knows his friend is dying of cancer, and he's like, okay, I just want to make amends before you die, type of thing. So he goes there and they talk and they're having fun and whatever, and it turns out that, like, you know, his friend is, because then there's these flashbacks where what happened was his friend, what's his name, Herb, gets found out that he's gay. This is the early 90s. He was sleeping in, like, he was found in like a gay raid or whatever, and, you know, where a bunch of men, I guess, are just sleeping together, and they get busted, and his face is plastered on front of TV. The network wants to let him go. The network confronts Bojack Horseman. They're like, listen, I know you're going to say, I'm going to leave if he gets fired. Don't do that. Don't be stupid. Don't ruin your career. Just accept that he's going. If you want to go with him, that's fine, but that's not going to do any favors for anybody.
Yeah.
He's, you know, and so Bojack, instead of seeing his friend leave, never confronts his friend again. And they also introduced that dear friend of theirs.
Oh, right.
I can't remember her name, but it's, yeah, there was this, again, there's all these flashbacks going back to their comedy showcase days and all that stuff.
And this is also the this is the episode where Bojack kisses Diane.
Okay, yeah, at the end. But so he goes back to his friend and he tries to sort of settle it, and his friend just gets really, really angry at him because, and then Bojack's like, look, I tried standing up for you and they wouldn't listen, and I just felt so bad that I couldn't. And he's like, and his friend says, Herb says, I didn't care about that. That's not what I gave a shit about. I gave a shit that my friends just abandoned me. When I needed to talk to you, you were nowhere to be seen. It didn't matter that I wasn't part of the TV show anymore. I just needed you to be there, and you weren't. And I get that from Bojack's point of view, because from Bojack's point of view, it's like, oh shit, I failed my friend. I can't face him now. And that just builds up. Now you can't face them anymore. Oh, I can't face them this week. It's been a month. It's been a week. It's been a week. It's been a month. It's been a year. It's been 10 years. How do you fix that? You know?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the whole time, him thinking it was because he thought he screwed up the negotiations. Meanwhile, he now finds out it's actually because he was a shitty friend. They're driving back. Todd gets mugged in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, there's these two girls, they bust into his car while he's like trying to get it out of the driveway. And these two girls, like the Hollywood thugs, and they're waiting for the I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous because they obviously climb in the car, and I mean, this whole thing's a setup from the get-go, but they climb in the car, they're like, get out of here, and he's trying to drive out, but he can't, and he gets just the car stuck even worse. And then he's like, look, girls, let's just talk about it. But the police never show up. And I was always wondering, like, why aren't the police showing up? They would have shown up by now. And so then they're lying on the grass and they're waxing poetry. And the girls, like, start pretending that they're interested in him and whatever. But it's all very genuine, and you really think... And then they relax or whatever. And he's like, girls, I trust you. And they're like, you do? And bam! They, like, knock him over the head and steal his wallet and run away. It was like the whole ruse just to get his wallet. Like, which there can't be anything in there. Yeah, so that was quite a little silly sequence. But then he gets left at the house, and Bojack has to obviously come pick him up later. But on the way there, he kisses Diane because he assumes that something's happening between the two of them, and she pushes him away. Like, not even, like, she doesn't kiss him back at all. She immediately pushes him away. And he's like, ooh, sorry, I thought, you know, and this is, again, another clue of her opinion on him. I don't know why this episode is called Telescope. Oh, right, because his buddy had a telescope and they were going to go back to that place and use the telescope to look at the people at Hollywood. And, but it all ruined because of the cancer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously the betrayal of Horsemanure. I don't know what manure means, but
I think it's supposed to be like manure. But
I get the manure thing, but I don't know what manure means. Yes, listen to the clicks of the mouse button, people.
You're doing that very deliberately.
I am. Okay, so the name, it's a pun, I guess, on force majeure. I don't know how you pronounce this word. Let's see what it says here. Mesure. Okay. So force majeure, horse majeure, meaning superior force. Okay, so there's a nice little bit of Latin French for you, ladies and gentlemen. Love-struck Bojack tries to sabotage the wedding of Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter. Todd is his friend who's going to try and help Bojack do this, becomes the driver for Mr. Peanut Butter. And also a really silly sequence where Mr. Peanut Butter's like, yeah, you can use my CV, because they were just sitting there talking about something. He's like, oh, I'm looking for a driver. Right. Oh, yeah. Todd sneaks into his house to look for evidence. Mr. Peanut Butter finds him in his house. He's like, are you here for the interview? And he's like, yeah. He's like, oh, wow, I haven't even posted it yet. Okay, well, let's get this going. He's like, do you have your resume here? And he's like, no. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. You can use mine. And then he takes the resume. He's like, oh, I see you can do a really good impression of Rodney Dangerfield. And he's like, I guess. Okay, go ahead. He's like, I'm Rodney Dangerfield. He's like, ha ha ha, no respect indeed. And I'm like, and this dog is just in the world of his own. He's like such an oblivious Hollywood person. And he's like, no, don't worry. I get that this is my CV, my resume. But I see you go to the same university as me. Like, he gets lost in his own lie. But yeah, so Todd is supposed to find information, and this is where Mr. Peanut Butter comes out saying he's not sure if he's actually fully in love with Diane, but he wants to marry her anyway.
Yeah.
And
to Todd of all people, right?
Yeah, to Todd. And then Todd's not sure because I think, has he found out that this is where he found out that Bojack's betrayed him?
I believe so.
Yeah, so now he doesn't know whether to help Bojack or not, and he doesn't. He doesn't tell Bojack anything. Oh, and at this point, we're finding like people ask, like when they answer the phones Hollywood, whatever, because the D is now completely gone. Nobody's replaced it. It's not going to be replaced, it seems. I mean, it's really silly. Yeah, so they get married, and then I think this is, geez, man, Diane wants to make this real quick. Like, they're getting married, they get engaged, and then they get married, like, within a week.
Yeah, it was like they were gonna get, like, at first they were gonna get married at, like, a year or 6 months from then, and then they just kept, pushing it closer, and then it became like, oh, yeah, let's not wait a week, let's not wait 6 months, let's do it next month, let's do it next week, let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was like, there was this whole scene where they're at some kind of Bed Bath & Beyond-y place, and they're doing their wedding registry, and it's like, the way that I interpreted this was that Diane was feeling a little bit conflicted, because, Bojack had just advanced on her, and she's like, my brain doesn't quite know how to register this, and then, so then she just decides, I guess, in part, to stick it to Bojack, that, no, let's just get married now.
I mean, I guess that could have been taken that way. I thought, because she was pretty clear on her intentions, was that she just doesn't like the ceremony of weddings. It's like, no, look, can we just get this over and done with quick? I don't like planning. I don't like doing all the rigmarole and the fanfare. I just wish it was over now. And then he's like, Mr. Peanut Butter's like, okay, why not? And I think that's a valid concern from either side's part. I mean, if you don't want to go through the whole fanfare, I mean, I know there are some girls and even some men out there who are like, oh, I want a fantastical wedding. But, I mean, it doesn't always have to be, right? If both sides are happy with it. It was Mr. Peanut Butter's third wedding. He didn't care.
Yeah.
And she didn't want an amazing wedding. So
I think this was also, like, I felt like the closer they pushed the wedding to a more recent date, the more that they, I guess, pull would be the more proper verb. But yeah, it was like the closer the wedding got to them, the more Mr. Peanut Butter was like, I'm not really sure if I want to go through with this. But then by the end of the wedding, he's totally convinced, like, yeah, no, this was the right thing to do. I'm really glad you talked me into doing this wedding sooner. think it was to Todd even. It was where he says these things. And then, of course, Bojack is just... There's that really awkward scene with Bojack just being at the wedding. Yeah.
Well, and isn't also where the Princess Carolyn, she meets the 3 kids in the trench coat.
Yeah.
There's these 3 kids in a trench coat that, to Bojack, is obviously 3 kids in a trench coat. And whenever Bojack says anything about these 3 kids in a trench coat, Princess Caroline twists his words into him being jealous.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, no, I'm not jealous. He is 3 kids in a trench coat. Can you not see that? And she's like, oh no, he's... And then like, the 3 kids in a trench coat, he's always like, I like business and doing taxes. Like, obviously, things that a kid would say that, like, a kid thinks adults just do. And so then Carolyn's like, she falls in love with him. And she's like, oh, he's so adult. This is what I need in my life.
Yeah. Which... Oh gosh, there's like a scene where Princess Carolyn is venting to Bojack about like, oh, I don't know, it was like his name is Vincent Adult Man or something.
And he's always doing the business at the place.
He's always doing the business at the business. He's like always working at the business factory.
Yeah, at the factory. Yeah.
Something silly like that. And yeah, that was a. I have to admit, that was like one of the things that I wish we could have seen. I mean, I understand why we didn't, but I really wanted some kind of gag with the kids are revealed as, yes, they are 3 kids in a trench coat, and then, you know, they go through this whole, I don't know, there's some gag in it. There's a joke in there somewhere. I know there is.
I mean, look, it's just, I think it's just the joke of the 3 kids in the trench coat. Like,
okay.
it's been done in shows. It's just, I guess, a pull on that, and then obviously then they make it further by making him an actual. Because I mean, we don't know actually to this point. Because later on, Princess Carolyn's like genuinely in love with him.
Yeah.
You know, and the 2 of them are actually on a relationship, in a relationship. I'm on a relationship, but yeah, it was very, very silly.
Yeah.
One Trick Pony. Bojack shoots a movie at Peanut Butter's house called Mr. Peanut Butter's Hollywood Heist. It's pretty much the whole story. Mr. Peanut Butter steals the story of Bojack stealing the D from Hollywood and turns it into a movie where Bojack is now... Who's Bojack playing? Oh, he's playing Mr. Peanut Butter because Mr. Peanut Butter has this weird love for Bojack. And, you know, and so he wants Bojack to play Mr. Peanut Butter, which for some reason Bojack decided to do, even though he hates Mr. Peanut Butter. And then... didn't that have something to do with Princess Carolyn is like, you should really do this movie or something like that? Yeah, I think it was to fix his to put, I can't remember exactly. Oh. Mr. Witherspoon is, you know, the frog, the bullfrog that helps with the funding of everything, is voiced by Stephen Colbert.
No.
Yeah. There's this big bullfrog who... like the boss of Princess Carolyn, who, I think he just makes like 1 appearance in the show.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't pick it up, because it was like, he sounded familiar, but then he was gone, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll wait for him to come back, and then he never did. Then there's, who's the actor from... man, that movie that everybody loves. Darn it. Inconceivable. The Princess Bride.
Yeah, from The Princess Bride, that guy. The actor who does that. I can't remember his name right now.
No. They said it at some point.
Yeah, they said it's like he plays Bojack, and he's got the Bojack Horseman horse mask on his head.
Yeah.
And then, I can't remember, then Naomi Watts, I think, plays, and this is so funny, because it's Naomi Watts that plays Diane, and so she becomes a character actor. But now throughout the whole episode, Todd is constantly trying to improve the movie, and Quentin Tarantino is the one directing it, and then the 2 of them get like into this whole, let's turn the movie into a story about this, and it becomes, in the end it becomes the next cinema... the amazing cinema experience becomes a box of fruit and gift bag or whatever. And so the whole movie just gets basically cancelled. But it starts off with Todd suggesting that Diane should have more parts, and then So Bojack's character pretty much just ends up saying "true dat" anytime anybody interacts with him. That's his only line. And Naomi is like, she gets so angry. She's like, I don't want to play 3-dimensional woman anymore. I just want to play a 2-dimensional woman who has no value. I am sick of these strong stereotypes of women in Hollywood movies. Obviously satirizing, the attitude that women are obviously just arm candy in movies or whatever. And if a woman isn't there, she must fall in love with a guy. A woman can't be in a movie for 5 minutes without needing a man's help or something.
Yep.
But yeah, so this episode's just really... Oh yeah, then the whole time Bojack thinks Todd is trying to sabotage him. Turns out Todd is just an idiot. And Todd thinks, oh yeah, that would have been a good idea to do that, to sabotage. But no, just an idiot.
As Todd is.
Yeah. Downer ending, episode 11. Bojack, Sarah Lynn, and Todd go on a drug-infused frenzy to rewrite Bojack's memoirs. Bojack has a revelation in his life where he hallucinates his life as with his former friend Charlotte, who is this deer that you learn from in the flashbacks when he visits his friend. So Charlotte, he has this whole flashback of what his life could have been, where he moves away with Charlotte to this little country house,
which is really depressing. Actually, like the flashback is not depressing. It's the fact that this
is what he wanted actually in the end.
Yeah,
this is what he wants now, at least.
Yeah, it's like, now that I know how my life has turned out because I took this path, and it actually, in the hallucination, Charlotte, the hallucinated Charlotte actually says, she sighs, and Bojack goes, what are you thinking? Because at this point in the flashback, the little girl that they had together is all grown up, and she's about to go on a date with this other boy, and they're both sitting on the porch together, and Charlotte sighs, and Bojack goes, what are you thinking about? And she goes, oh, I'm just thinking about how this could have been our life, and that snaps him into another hallucination.
Yeah, so, I mean, this whole drug sequence was really cool, because there's this part with the drugs before the whole flashback thing starts happening, because it starts off, he's unhappy with the book that Diane has written, because it puts him in a terrible light. She says so many bad things about him, and the whole time you don't ever pick that up, because you think the two of them are having such a good rapport with each other that they're becoming really good friends, and he was under the impression that she liked him. That's why he attempted to kiss her. The two of them were supposed to become these good buddies, and he's completely unhappy with it. He doesn't want people to see that he's a flawed human. He wants everybody to love him again, like he was loved in the 90s, like this perfect being. Well, not human, I guess, like a horse. But yeah, so they take these drugs and everything to just stay awake and finish their...
to kick the inspiration into high gear,
so
which is an American myth, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, apparently in America, there's a myth thinking that if you take a lot of drugs, it makes you a better artist and writer, but...
I think that's a worldwide myth, really.
Oh, is it? I don't know. I heard it was... I don't know. Someone once
probably started in America because of your 70s drug-fused decade, but... I'm
surprised it wasn't a British thing, because...
But the Brits did it too. Yeah, no, I mean, rock and roll pretty much...
I mean,
everybody was high on drugs.
The first instance that comes to mind is the Beatles, where they had, they had their period where it was like, I want to hold your hand, and then suddenly it's about an octopus's garden, and...
Well, I mean, that could also just have been because of Ringo Starr. Anyway, so... Jeez, got to pick on the one Beatle that's still really... I mean, there's two Beatles, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, so he's all upset about it. He decides he's going to rewrite the book in like 5 days. Takes a bunch of drugs just so they can get the thing. And then there's this really awesome representation of time skippage when it comes to drugs that I thought was done so well. He gets Sarah Lynn and Todd to help him write the book. And he's like... what was the reference? That Sarah Lynn makes a reference to something. She's like, blah, 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 like Hulk Hogan when he made an appearance on our show to tell us not to do drugs.
Oh, something like that,
yeah. There's something, I think it was Hulk Hogan, but it was like some guy. And then, like, it does this thing where he has his outlines go, like, they split out and they come back, and he's like, if only Hulk Hogan could see us now. But he hadn't moved, basically what you see is like a 5-second loop, or 5-second jump. And the other two characters are like, what are you talking about? He's like, that Hulk Hogan thing she just said. He's like, she said that like 3 hours ago. He's like, what? It's like, it's been 3 hours, you know, it's, and that's happened to me. I mean, I've been high where it's like, you're sitting there and you're like, dude, that was funny. And he's like, what? And I'm like, that thing you just said. And he's like, no, I said that like a while ago, you know, and you get really freaked out. And so I thought that was an awesome little representation of that, just a nice little snippet.
You can tell that the people who wrote that part were probably on drugs at some point.
Yeah, because a lot of the time when drug like trips happen, there's always like the gooey stuff like follows into each other. And I mean, I've never had that, but I've never really had hard drugs. I do think this has been the closest representation of the feeling I've had on drugs. And so, yeah, if you want to know what a general feeling of being on drugs is like, watch this episode 11. They try and write this stuff. This is when he has his weird sort of fake flashback where he has his fake future where he dreams of moving away instead of going on his Hollywood career. He moves away, ends up marrying...
That already.
Sorry?
We mentioned
No, I'm just like running it down.
Oh.
Gets married, has a kid who...
Are you on drugs?
No, I just wanted to break it down again. And then we never really... I mean, we mentioned his kid for a bit, but he actually like has a name for the kid. The kid is... And so I think this implies that he's actually definitely thought about this. Because people... I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely thought about different paths of my life. Mm-hmm. And I've thought about them in detail. Like, maybe not the detail of, like, say, sitting down and talking about a podcast. Or talking about a show in a podcast, but... that, like, you know, in another life that I've taken, I wouldn't be thinking about this moment. Mm. But I do think about, like, different pathways, like maybe becoming a boxer instead of an animator, you know, and how that path would have gone.
Yeah.
I definitely would have been a lot dumber at this point, because those guys don't keep all their faculties.
We would have never met, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, you don't know. I mean, I would have been at an American boxing circuit, and I don't know.
I don't think so.
You don't know.
Do you take me as someone who...
I could have gone to New Mexico to fight somebody, and then I would have been roaming New Mexico for some reason, and you would have been out that one day.
Well, that's
and then I would have spoken in my weird rocky because my brain's been bashed in.
Well, that was kind of how my parents met, sans the brains being bashed in.
Yeah.
Just my dad from Chicago just happened to be at that one hotel, and my mom just happened to be at that one pool, and then stuff happened. Stuff happened, and then I existed.
Yeah. But, in the end, it turns out to all be fake, and he snaps to... realizes that they've written quite a bit, and he sends the link forward, and
it's all gibberish.
Yeah, it's all gibberish. It's like it's because there's the doctor who gives them the drugs. His name is Doctor Who, H-U, and so they make a lot of Doctor Who jokes. And he's like, so but the only person like Bojack's like, oh seriously, like Doctor Who? And he's like, yeah, that's me. He's like, no, like you know that Costello bit where it's like, who's on first base? Yes, who's on first base? No, I mean when or whatever.
Yeah.
And like what? And it's like that whole skit. It's basically now with Doctor Who, but obviously referencing Doctor Who, the show. And then only one other person in the room is like, yeah, the space time travel guy, and it's a very silly sequence. It comes down. Princess Caroline calls him back, and he's like, look, the first 50 pages or whatever are just Doctor Who fan fiction, erotic fan fiction. And then the second half of the book is like YouTube video links, which are unusable in a printable format. So, yeah, your book is a bust. He then goes to Diane, apologizes, and they get his book published. Then episode 12 is 3 months later. His book is quite a success. People love that he's a flawed being, like the rest of them. It's working really well. Getting him back into the limelight pretty much does what Diane said it would do. She's happy. He's happy, I guess. It's all kickstarted their careers. Deal. Yeah, so he gets. Yeah, they say you can choose any movie he basically wants to be in, and he says he wants to be in a movie called The Secretariat. Oh, which I think this is the episode where they have that flashback to the 70s where they talk about the Secretariat. The Secretariat in this, I mean, obviously the Secretariat in real life was a racehorse, but in this movie he is a runner, a marathon runner, who was an inspiration to Bojack, and Bojack's like, I love you so much, you're an inspiration to me. Turns out that the Secretariat ended up in a lot of some scandal. I can't remember what the scandal was, but he commits suicide, and I guess that's sort of a thing. But he tells Bojack that, like, like Bojack writes him a letter, and on TV, and he replies to TV, he's like, yes, you must strive, like, to reach... and it's also established, by the way, that Bojack's parents are complete assholes.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it all comes down to Bojack's like, no, I want to play the Secretariat. He's my hero. He gets the part, but Andrew Garfield was apparently going to get the part. Like, Andrew Garfield calls back, he's like, I want to be Secretariat. Which is so silly, because again, it's Andrew Garfield, and they just want his name on the front cover, but Bojack is an actual freaking horse. And they were so moved by his audition that they were about to hire him on the spot, and then Andrew Garfield calls back, and and so Bojack doesn't even throw a fit as you would expect him to do. He just leaves. I guess he's grown as a character. Oh yeah, I think it was also in the previous episode, right? Bojack runs in to Diane's. She's at a panel at a Ghost Rider panel.
Yes.
And this was so amazing to me. This was like where I realized everything was not everything. The whole show was really from the perspective of Bojack, because he's standing there and he's saying to her, "Please, I know I've been a horrible person, and I don't want to be that horrible person anymore. I just didn't know who or where or what I was. Please, Diane, you're the only person who can tell me, am I a good person? Please, just tell me I'm a good person. If you tell me I'm a good person, then it's fine. I just need you to tell me." And she doesn't say a thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's because he's not a good person.
Yeah.
And he's realized that he has been a dick to everybody, all his friends, I don't know about his family, but all his friends, everybody around him who are trying to help him even. He's just been a complete arsehole to him. And I guess that's why, and then they jump 3 months later. And I guess he's trying to reform himself. He wants to be that nice person that will make her like him, I guess. But he's not doing it for her, he's doing it for himself.
Apparently the 13th is the Christmas special, which we have not seen.
Yeah, we haven't seen the so yeah, the 13th episode, like, pretty much, it rounds everything off. He gets the job. He then sits on the roof, as is the end of the first episode. He sits on the roof, meets Diane. She's also just gotten a job offer. She was given a job offer to go, like, work overseas, to go do a documentary or write a book about, like, some humanitarian and helping kids in Kenya or whatever. And she wanted to do that, and then Mr. Peanut Butter talked her down, and now she's actually on staff writing for the Secretariat, so she and Bojack will be working together still. And Bojack basically asks the question, what do you do once you have the thing you've really wanted all your life? And she's like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but she's basically like, I guess you find the next thing, you move on.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's so stupid. Like, life is so stupid, and it's like so true. I mean, that touched me in ways, because I'm constantly chasing for that next thing. Many times in my life I've gotten what I wanted, and I'm just not. That's actually not what I wanted. Or, okay, I've got it now. Now what? You can't stop.
Yeah. You
can't stop. Even these Hollywood rich people, these famous people, who get everything that their hearts desire. It's not really what their hearts desire, or it's just that they're still people. And that's what this show has told me. These actors are still people.
Yeah.
There's still people deep down inside. Yes, some of them are arseholes, some of them aren't. Mr. Peanut Butter wasn't, except for stealing Bojack's ideas. But that's just the thing.
He was a different kind of, like, he was more of an idiot more than anything. But he didn't come off as being...
He didn't intentionally hurt anyone.
Yeah, he was not malicious in a purposeful way. He was only just an idiot, really. And, like, even if when he, I mean, unless like you said, where he did steal Bojack's idea, and I think a lot of it was because he was jealous of the friendship that Bojack and his girlfriend / wife.
Yeah, from Diane's point of view, it was a friendship. From Bojack's point of view, he probably was actively trying to steal Diane away.
Yeah. And I must admit, I'm actually really glad they didn't go that route, because that's such a common thing where it's... Well,
as I said, like I was saying earlier, they were setting up, like, all these little points where it's like, oh, okay, in the end, Diane and main character, like, girl and main character are going to get together, because obviously the relationship between girl and rival character is flawed, which it is. but it's still, they still tell a real life story even in this ridiculous world where it's like, she obviously loves him. She's not gonna just abandon this relationship because, oh, she's found somebody else. That's not how life works.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it was a little convenient because Andrew Garfield breaks his legs and that's why he doesn't take the Secretariat part anymore. But
there was I mean, just through all the ridiculous, there was a real life grittiness to it, and not in like a ridiculous action movie kind of gritty. It was more like, you know, like the only, if I could sum up the ending of this show into one word, it would be just, just that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It didn't close with any fanfare. It didn't close with. It closed with, oh, okay, their lives are moving on, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, they've finished this roller coaster ride of a sequence in their life, and now they're moving on to the next stage. And that's why I was happy with the ending, because it's like, okay, all that shit is actually sorted out. Everything that the show started off, all the shit that the show started, has been concluded.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I mean, sure, you don't get to see him make the Secretariat, but that's not necessary because now you've seen him grow out of that shitty phase of being an asshole, and now he's not. Now he's not an asshole.
Yeah, it's, and I mean, there are so many points. I mean, this felt long, but there are so many points and little tidbits of Bojack and all of the other characters' growths that we just completely didn't think about or skipped. But yeah, I'd watch it again.
Yeah, yeah. I would watch it again. I'd probably watch it again when season 2 comes out. So yeah. So I stick with my original vote, 5 out of 5.
Ditto.
So 4.5 for you. Okay, guys, you should watch it if you can. If you don't want to, don't. I don't care. If you have any comments and or things that you wish to say to me, email address for the show is the anonymators@gmail.com. The links will be in the whichever descriptions or wherever on the show. And see you next time. So for me, Wesley.
And me, Emily.
We'll see you next time. We're still working on a catchphrase.
Never